Because today is the big day in my life of my book, Raised by Wolves, Possibly Monsters, being released today's book launch day. And throughout the day, I'm going to read several chapters, excerpts from the book. So this excerpt happens in, I think, 1994. I was working at Radio Shack. I was now clean and sober for a few years and was a very successful manager of Radio Shack stores. And I was taking a nighttime course at William Patterson University in Patterson, New Jersey, an intro to social work class. And I just wanted to learn what social workers do. So that's where we are. And the name of this chapter is You Quit Your Job and Become a Social Worker. One morning at Radio Shack, a well-to-do suburban woman, a living Vogue magazine cover, strolled in. Her son, browsing like most boys between 8 and 12 years old, wanted to try remote-controlled cars, police scanners, audio equipment, and computers. She grabbed his hand and yanked him away each time he touched something. Her tone and words had bite and bark. When he felt the keyboard of one of the fledgling home computers made by Tandy, she even slapped him across the face. She grabbed his arm, dragged him to the counter, handed me a calculator, and told me to replace the battery. It was not a question, it was a demand. My heart ached for the little boy, and I was furious. I replaced the batteries quickly so that she would leave the store. It was a Wednesday afternoon in 1993. And that night, I had to be at a class, Intro to Social Work. It was a new direction for me, one I felt very ready to take. While I enjoyed sales and my work at Radio Shack, something inside of me told me I could do more with my life than help suburban ladies buy the correct battery. So, in the spirit of a question, I signed up for a one-semester intro to the field of social work at William Patterson University. It didn't hurt that the professor, Stacy Block, taught the class. I had a crush on Stacy and was impressed with everything she did. At the beginning of every class, Stacy asked if anybody had questions or experiences they wanted to share with the class. I raised my hand and shared what I experienced at the work earlier. When I finished sharing, I said, I was so upset by what happened, I didn't know what to do. So that's my question. What do I do? Stacy looked at me and hesitated. She placed the white chalk in the chalk holder on the bottom of the green chalkboard and slowly walked towards me. When my instructor got to my desk in the third row, she sat on my desk, leaning toward me and looking directly into my eyes. Michael, what you do is you quit your job at Radio Shack tomorrow and you become a social worker. I was stunned. I was thrilled that what I had shared moved the instructor enough to stop what she was doing and give me a direct call to action. And I was inspired in a way that I had not experienced previously in my 30-something years of life. During my ride home that night, I decided that when I got to my store in the morning, I would call the district manager and resign, which I did. In the morning, I quit my full-time job at Radio Shack after 8 years, giving them 2 months' notice, without knowing how I would support myself after that. Quitting Radio Shack was my first giant leap of faith in sobriety. After formally resigning, I told the staff I was leaving during our Saturday morning meeting. A guy named Harold, who worked part-time 2 evenings a week, he was a retired business owner of an electronic sales and repair shop that he ran for 30 years. I told him individually about leaving Radio Shack. That night, Harold caught me off guard with his response. Let me tell you something, Mr. Swerdloff. You're a good guy, and I like working with you. I hesitated working part-time for a young white guy, but you're all right. Here's the thing, Mr. Swerdloff. You're not as far along in becoming a great man as you think. Yeah, you heard that right. More importantly, The retail industry, especially retail electronics, loses its good people who have integrity to other industries. There have to be some people with integrity in retail. We can't be stuck with all the sleazebags and dirtbags. Retail needs good people too. I've always remembered what Harold said and the clarity, honesty, and humility which he shared it. Between Stacy and Harold, I became a social worker. And then between Jeff and Dorianne, I became a social worker, community organizer, and alternative counselor. And that's where my career as a social worker, community organizer, and counselor began.